Welcome to the Third Side Convo with your host, Bob Phipps. Your panelists today are Jeff Nolan, Ted Johnson, Michelle Walters, and Trin Sloot. And now, your host, Bob Phipps.
Welcome, everyone, to the show today, Third Side Convo. Now, today we're going to dive into the causes behind the anxious generation. Now, that was a book written by Jonathan Haidt as a bestseller. Now, I grew up in Florida, so I experienced like air raid drills, hiding under desks. I had a siren at the end of our street that went off every Monday at noon, which were constant reminders of external threats. However, on the flip side, I did sneak my daddy's Playboys, which I did much prefer over the penthouses he later started getting, kind of like how I preferred the early Beatles to the Rolling Stones. But back to anxiety. We're going to try to figure out what are kids going through these days. Are there political aspects, and what are the causes? Should the government intervene in social media use for young people? Conservatives and liberals both have strong opinions on this matter. Okay? Conservatives often push for parental controls, but minimal government intervention, while liberals advocate for comprehensive regulations to protect young people's mental health and privacy. Now, Haidt's book has sparked some significant debate. I looked into the critiques of it. Now, The Garden called it a pocket full of poison. However, at the end of the article, it said that it is nonetheless an urgent and essential read, and it ought to be a foundational text for the growing movement to keep smartphones out of schools and young children off of social media. This conversation is crucial for understanding the political and social dimensions of youth anxiety today. So we're going to be getting into our show in a minute. We're going to go on and take our first break, and then we'll be right back, and we're going to start into the show.
Corona Cigar Company is your one-stop shop for all your cigar needs. Whether that's a brand new humidor, a box of those new cigars you've been waiting for, a top-of-the-line cutter or lighter, a place to enjoy the finest cigars and spirits with friends, or the only cigars grown right here in the Sunshine State, we've got you covered. Come visit one of our retail locations for the ultimate cigar experience. Visit us online at coronacigar.com.
Oak Ridge Gun Range is a family-oriented shooting range that has been in business for over 30 years. They specialize in basic firearm training and offer numerous services such as consignments, gun trades, gunsmithing, and concealed weapon classes. I even got my training for gun safety at Oak Ridge Gun Range. Great customer service, and firearm safety is what they do best. So find out more at oakridgegunrange.com.
Now, there's probably a bunch of ways that we could go with this thing. In fact, we're probably going to come up with some topics that we're going to talk about where we may need to go into them on it's a whole nother show. Ted, you're the one that came up with this idea in the book of of Jonathan Haidt's book, and I've had a lot of good response to it. What do you think the main points of it are that we ought to talk about today?
Well, the overall testimony of the book is that kids use comparison, which they always do on social media, and it cripples joy. It destroys joy because they have a relation that they can value their own experience to someone else. And if someone else always looks better in your current situation. So we see it in birthday parties, see it in what college you're going to go to. And it can't just be your own singular experience. It becomes one of 30 or 40 experiences that you often rate yourself, which is natural. Real quick, I had two daughters. Both of them went through social media ills. One was bullied online when she was in 8th grade. Another one, she was 15, 16 on Instagram or Snapchat. She found out she wasn't going to a party and she'd plunge into depression because her friends wouldn't let her come. So I've seen it have that effect, and it does have that effect, but I have some other solutions to it, but more on that later.
We'll get on that. Well, all right, good. Michelle, jump into your opening thoughts.
I with regards to this book, though, there was a couple of different things though that it was really trying to point out. The first and foremost I felt was with regards to a reduce of playtime, with regards to kids being able to sit there and interact because of the use of the smartphones. So with his premise, though, was, he was trying to sit there and tackle four different things, which was, increase playtime, removing smartphones, having age restrictions though with regards to social platforms, and completely eliminating smartphones. He's not necessarily dictating that phones should be eliminated out of school, but the smartphone aspect where you have complete full access to social media aspects. So, I mean, there is a couple of different areas of this that really honestly need to be critiqued on. And so it wasn't necessarily just a social media aspect. That was just one facet of the takeaway that I took.
Yeah, it is a broad topic. It is a broad topic. Jeff,
It's
what do
very
you
broad.
see as the most important things that we need to talk about, Jeff?
Well, I mean, I think that by and large, relative to this topic, and especially with smartphones and social media and kids, the horses are out of the barn. And if, we try to legislate or manipulate society into something we think it should be, it's a fool's errand. We're bailing water slower than it's coming in. I feel that it's what we've experienced over the past 15, 20 years is very akin to the Industrial Revolution, in that it's been an extraordinary explosion of technological progress.
Mm-hmm.
And now the unintended negative consequences are coming home to roost, just like they did in the 19th century. And I think we're going through that again.
Gotcha. Now, Trent, I held you for the end because you're the most anxious of everybody, I'm sure, right? I mean, you're the youngest one here. You know people that are anxious. What are all the causes for this, or what are give me your opening thoughts to this topic?
I mean, I think there's a handful of causes. To me, some of the stuff that stands out the most is, the play-based childhood. Now it's a phone-based childhood. Taking away all the things that, we all kind of still grew up on, coming home when the lights turned on, playing outside with friends, dealing with issues, things like that were kind of fundamental things as humans that now, with everyone being on their phones and being separated, kind of hinders that. And that's a huge root cause for social anxiety.
I think Jeff's got a really good point. The horses are out of the barn. I don't think it's a end of the world type thing, but I do remember that when people came out of World War II and the younger generation, one thing they did, a lot of them smoked. And you know what happened in the 60s and 70s? They had to put markers on cigarette cartons. They had to take off the advertising in magazines and billboards. And it became a public relations case to limit smoking. And smoking rates have dropped greatly in the last 30 years, to 40 years. And the same thing has to happen to Facebook and Snapchat and all the other, I don't even know if Snapchat exists anymore, and Instagram, is that the parents to say, hey, this isn't a good idea. Everybody says it's not a good idea. And just that influence will slowly diminish its influence.
And that can happen organically too. I think that as the users of these platforms, the younger users of these platforms, after they've extracted the experience from it, it becomes redundant and boring. And I kind of feel like we're seeing that a little bit already with significantly younger kids, like teenagers, as opposed to, people who are maybe approaching 30 now. And there's more cynicism. They actually remind me a little bit more of like kids I grew up with, just from a cynicism standpoint. And I don't know if that's good or bad. I really don't. I feel at home with irony and cynicism because I'm just wired that way. So it seems good to me, but I don't know if on a meta level it really is. I definitely.
Who believes that the government? Yeah, who believes that the government needs to step in on this thing? Ted, does the government need to step in?
Yeah.
No, I don't think it can. I think there's a lot of good things about cell phones that you don't want to regulate. But I think it just becomes a popular, just like anti-smoking. Don't do it. They didn't ban cigarettes. Look what happened to vaping. They tried to ban vaping and got kicked back. You can still vape. And the nicotine for young kids, there is a marketing campaign against kids buying nicotine-heavy vaping products, but it's not outlawed.
Well, the Just Say No didn't work too well. Nancy Reagan's Just Say No didn't work too well to drugs.
No, it didn't. No, it didn't. And then not only that, though, but even with regards to, buying cigarettes, there's still regulations, though, on an age bracket, though, that they're able to go and buy these. So, and not only that, but they've made a huge, public outcry with regards to the disadvantages. But again, though, I mean, we're not here to sit there and talk about cigarettes. We're, here to sit there and discuss with regards to anxiety and depression and potential causes that are created. And one of the harms is, I think that with all of these social medias and being able to sit there and have complete full access to all of these kids, there's no parameters, there's no age verifications. There's, there's somebody that's going to have to be able to sit there and step in and be able to sit there and say, hey, listen, it's at some point, if the parents aren't going to do their due diligence on being able to sit there and parent their kids, then maybe it's our social responsibility as a community, as a society, as a country, to sit there and protect our youth and say, listen, we need to sit there and create these age stipulations on there and make these companies accountable.
Okay, perfect. Just a quick yes or no trend. Government need to step in?
No.
Okay, we got three
I'm
no's
gonna
and
stop.
that's okay. We got 3 no's and 1 yes. All right, we got to take our next break for our sponsor, and we will be right back.
Aw, Dad, my computer's slow again and I can't play my games.
Call Your Computer Solutions today, and we will scan for viruses and clean that computer up remotely and make it fast again. Our phone number is 407-826-0810.
Thanks, Dad, my computer's fast again. Now I can do my homework. Thanks for calling Your Computer Solutions at 407-826-0810. The Tibia Show would like to thank Boggy Creek Airboat Adventures for being one of our sponsors. I got to go on an airboat and saw a real gator. I even got to go to the gem mine and mine for some gems. We ate a steak dinner at the restaurant and even got some gator bites. If you want to have a blast with the entire family, I suggest you go to www.bcairboats.com right now. Get your tickets today. The website again is bcairboats.com.
All right, we're back. So we kind of ended that thing with figuring out, the government regulation seems to be a part of this. I guess let's go to the left and say, isn't there any reasonable regulation that the government can do to help with this problem? Jeff?
Well, I don't know. I think that government regulation relative to something like social media and children using smartphones, I just don't see how that realistically works. Yeah. Whether or not you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, how is that implemented? It's again, I think it comes back to this ship has sailed so far beyond us that we barely see the taillights of it. And we're
Oops, you froze.
Ted?
Oh, do we freeze?
Yeah.
You froze.
Oh, no.
Ted, go. Ted, bring that.
So
keep that argument going.
Jeff's got a good point, though. Back to the horses on the farm. Here's one for you. Here's what will make it difficult.
Okay.
How many parents complaining about social media spend 2 or 3 hours a night gaming? Huh? Oh, how about streaming? So you're online. I don't care if you're streaming or Instagramming. You're still online. So where do you draw the line now? That gets pretty hairy. And, of course, hypocrisy among parents telling me not to smoke, even though my mom's puffing away in a Palmel Gold. I didn't smoke, but the point was the hypocrisy was front and center.
Okay, listen, I'm going to sit here and bring it back, though, too, with regards to, I really honestly do feel that there needs to be some type of government oversight or regulation that are going to be on this. Because at the end of the day, we have 13-year-olds and 12-year-olds and 10-year-olds are being able to sit there and have access to material that far exceeds their ability to where that their brains aren't even developed. I mean, it's completely appropriate and it's desensitizing.
We had that growing up as kids with the internet.
Nowhere near that. No. There has been a huge. I mean, we didn't have, the access.
I could type www. whatever the heck I wanted, and it came up.
When you were 10 years old, you could?
Those,
and be able to
2000.
pull up porn or whatever type of salacious information that you wanted when you were 10 years old.
Yep, it was wild.
And well, one thing that happened is I look back because I'm here. I live in the Bay Area. I saw this explode, 20 years ago. 3 things happened: individual mobility, which is your smartphone. Okay, on top of better processing. So now the smartphones got bigger. They were able to handle the battery load without getting too hot, which was a big problem, by the way, it was solved. And then finally is someone looked to go, there's this thing called the government satellite system. We can tap into GPS. So those three things led to a great conglomeration of data that's capable. Michelle, we know that you go into the store, you take pictures of something you saw, and we know when you did it. You know what? And there's millions of people do that every day. They gather all that data, they throw it in the banks, they break it down. Your algorithms are formed. That is what the government didn't see. And like Alan said, it's way beyond what the government can do to take away. If you take away anything, you take away the ability to track where they people are, no matter what. Okay, unless they posted themselves. 2, you got to be able to age discriminate and limit what the Facebook and Instagram can do with information on 12, 13, 14-year-olds. They've already started to do it, but kids fake it anyway. So it's a very complex problem.
I don't think it's as complex as you think. I think that, with regards to these social media platforms, though, they're able to sit there and put a lot more restrictions on than what we're aware of. But still, though, when you're stating, though, that you want to, yes, we have age restriction, this and that, who's going to implement this? Obviously, it's going to have to be government oversight. The social media platforms aren't going to sit there and say, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and parole this by ourselves. No, they're not. They're going to have some entity that's going to be even larger that's going to have to dictate to them, and create fines and stipulations to where if you're not following the rules, you are going to be punished. And that's where, a lot of the various different states and some rules and regulations that are coming up are trying to do is make them accountable. And the only way to make them accountable is going to be through government intervention. It's not going to be by us. Because I'm not going to call Facebook and say, hey, listen, I don't want you to do this. They're going to be like, yeah, right. It goes in one ear and out the other. It needs to be an entity that's going to be much bigger than me. It's going to be much bigger than us. And that's going to have to be, unfortunately, the federal government and being able to sit there and step in. If they can dictate how old it is that we can drive or this and that, they should be able to sit there and dictate, okay, well, these things are not going to be suitable for these kids at this age bracket.
Wow, Trent, do you think that that'll work?
Well, I think there's really no control over how much time you're actually using on the screen or how much screen time you are using. The government really can't control that. I think that kind of comes down to either your parents letting you have that much screen time or how much you're using yourself. So I think we just need to develop as a culture, put the phone away at dinner kind of a thing and just stop using so much screen time. Or if you're going to raise your kids, have it, mandated where, they're not getting a screen phone until 13, or they may have a flip phone, like certain cultural things like that. Like Ted was saying with the smoking, I kind of see it more going that way. Like, yeah, you can still go have your 18-year-old buddy buy you a pack of cigarettes at 14 if you want, but it's up to you to decide if you're going to develop a smoking habit.
So you could borrow your
with the phone.
Yeah, you could borrow your 18-year-old screen phone, but you can't bring it home with you. So the rest of your time, you got a flip phone.
Exactly.
Happening. And I think, I use my phone too much. I know it's a problem. I think we all do. We've all evolved. My dad who yelled at me to get off my phone while I'm driving, that dude's on his phone the entire time while he's driving just because it's there. And it's not like he's doing it in malintent. It's just our culture has developed to where everyone's so darn addicted to it that it really comes down to us having to say no.
I find something interesting with the smoking analogy, not to keep coming back to this, but one of the big reasons why, and perhaps this relates. One of the big reasons that smoking became so out of favor,
taboo,
is it was taxed out of favor.
Yes.
A pack of cigarettes is $10.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's huge. So, and Michelle, you're talking about the government should step in. What if
no.
And I'm just being completely devil's advocate hypothetical here. What if they stepped in that way? What if there was a tax to use?
And they are. There are. There has been legislative that's, tried to be passed or whatever. Arkansas, Ohio, Utah, California. And what they're really, honestly, the digital bill of rights, though, what they're really trying to do is create it to where these companies are going to be fined. They'll be, with regards to age verification or whatever, they're going to be fined either $50,000 up to $50,000 per violation. And then also they're going to have to be accountable by parents. Parents will be able to go in and sue these companies. Sue these various different social media platforms. I don't necessarily know, I can't imagine the magnitude on that. But at some point, though, again, the social media platforms, they're there to sell. They're there to sit there and make your kids and ourselves addicted to their products and what they're trying to promote. And
Alan, it has to be said, though, the taxes increased after study showed that heart disease, lung cancer, and all were related to smoking. And that's why the taxes were justified, is to pay for the health care of the damage that cigarettes cause. Now, there's already studies showing that depression is great among the teen kids who are online a lot. Suicide is up among teen kids. When you get those correlations, and you can tax, you're absolutely right.
Well, no, you should. I mean, not only that, but how many times have you sit there and watched these stories to where you see these kids that are being bullied into suicide, or, or providing, inappropriate material to other people that they're being, misled into. No, I mean, there has to be some type of social responsibility to where, listen, I mean, these things were taking place on your platform. You know what I mean? Somewhere at the end of the day, if your child were to sit there and die of a suicide,
so those companies
continuously being bullied, there has to be some
Hey, Michelle, are you saying those companies ought to have some responsibility for what they're doing and accept something? Yeah, I don't know. Well, that's what I'm guessing. You're saying they share this responsibility for the issue that's happening. And certainly, obviously, we need to discuss it. Let's figure out what we're going to do after the next break and just figure out what changes might be able to be made. We'll be right back.
Corona Cigar Company is your one-stop shop for all your cigar needs. Whether that's a brand new humidor, a box of those new cigars you've been waiting for, a top-of-the-line cutter or lighter, a place to enjoy the finest cigars and spirits with friends, or the only cigars grown right here in the Sunshine State, we've got you covered. Come visit one of our retail locations for the ultimate cigar experience. Visit us online at coronacigar.com.
Oak Ridge Gun Range is a family-oriented shooting range that has been in business for over 30 years. They specialize in basic firearm training and offer numerous services such as consignments, gun trades, gunsmithing, and concealed weapon classes. I even got my training for gun safety at Oak Ridge Gun Range. Great customer service, and firearm safety is what they do best. So find out more at oakridgegunrange.com.
All right, we're back. Ted, you being a dad and all this other stuff and reading this book, and obviously a lot of this stuff isn't new to you from a standpoint of seriousness, but certainly brings it to light. What would you do differently?
Well, I mean, it comes down to parental control. When I was growing up, my dad was a school teacher. My dad hated two things. He hated television during the day, and he hated television during the week. We could not watch television during the week. We had to read books. Parents can have more control of this than I think, and that's where it starts. You can turn off the router. And then everybody has to talk because nothing works if you turn off the router, including your television, most likely. At least that's what mine would. So I think it's a personal step up, personal sacrifice in many cases by parents to say, okay, we're going to do this as a family and really control it in the house. And if that comes and how they interact once in school, like same thing. I don't like cigarettes, but my best friend smokes cigarettes. How are you going to handle it? Well, you hope that the child, has enough self-worth to say, I don't need that. My parents think it's bad for me.
Gotcha.
I hope it goes the same way.
Parents doing pretty much exactly what Ted just said. That are completely shutting down, at least within the family, any kind of screen or online interaction. Not to say like, hey, kids, don't do this or this is bad. Just like when we are together, we are together. We are not. We're not doing this.
So we need to make it almost about not a politeness issue, not a this, but it is an urgent issue, I think. I mean, I've got it where I've got a nephew and a niece, and when they're over, they're on their they're finally getting out of it, but they're on their iPads the whole time. And I'm sitting here going, and, well, hell, my little brother's on the peanut gallery, and, what do you do about that? I think we've got to actively do something. Trent, how active do we have to be to deal with this problem?
I mean, like I was kind of saying earlier, I think we just kind of have to actively reduce our screen time. And whether it's our parents, pulling out the Wi-Fi plug after a certain time, or us being, our own adults with smoking too much or drinking too much and too much screen time. I mean, we all know there's limits. I've set it on my phone sometimes and I still go past it. We all use the phone. So again, it's kind of just coming to, I don't have any kids, so I could speak for when I do want to raise my kids, I want to reduce the screen time. But as Michelle and I were talking about yesterday, things do change when you have kids, so it's totally different. But listening to a podcast earlier today about the subject, I think if your friend group of parents, or if we as a group of parents all come together, and the parents of those kids all kind of have the same mindset of, hey, let's just let our kids have flip phones until they're 13 or 14, then it's not that same, strange reaction of you being the odd man out. As far as everything else that has social media tied into it with, that Ted mentioned.
So we need to take it as if we need to just start deciding that this is the way we've got to talk, and try to just urge people to be that way, to urge people to start taking responsibility. Michelle?
Yeah, because at this point it's inevitable.
It has to be a social movement, though. I mean, that's going to be the case.
It is going to be a social movement.
Way too many times, though, where all of us, we've gone out to eat and we've sit there and we've watched parents and their kids are sitting there on their phones or whatever it is, tablets, whatever the case might be. They're not even interacting with the parents. I've gone to the beach, same situation. They're not even going in the water. They're not doing anything. You know what I mean? And the unfortunate thing is a lot of people will sit there and consider, oh, that's family time. We're all together. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's, you know what I mean? It's you're together in, in proximity, but you're not there spiritually to sit there and enhance and to create that bond. You're not, you know what I mean? You're not necessarily forcing your kids to sit there and say, put down the phones, do this and that. And if we could sit there and get the message out, you know what I mean, for the influencers or whoever it might be, you know what I mean, to where they could sit there and really move the dial.
It's kind of back to the cigarette analogy again. Yes. Just the fact that we want to make it as fun as we make it now to cigarette smokers who have to leave the area to go smoke, right?
Exactly. Yes, absolutely. Almost make it like a you know what I mean, a social stigma to be able to be like, oh, your kid's on the phone.
So I'll give a quick example. This was from a couple years ago when I lived and worked in Nicaragua, and granted we're in Nicaragua, Wi-Fi was still around, but we, there was only Wi-Fi in certain locations. So one of the special things that we did, as a surf camp, was we all had dinner together with no Wi-Fi, no cell phones.
Yes.
So I mean, this was 2013 to 2018 that I worked there. But talking about the family environment every night, sitting down at dinner, no phones even at the table. I mean, they could be at the table, but there was just no Wi-Fi. Everyone's having face-to-face conversations, and I think that's the root of what's missing. I personally think,
Do you know what would be interesting, though? Do you know how people always sit there and they do a dry January? You know what I mean? People will sit there and do, okay, well, we're going to do a dry January. Maybe sit there and make it, a movement to where you go, okay, well, you know what I mean, on February, you know what I mean?
People do that.
Whatever month. Listen, no cell phones at the dinner table, no, you know what I mean? So one way or another, specify when you're able to sit there and spend family time that you completely shut down the cell phones altogether.
That would be great, but we're not the ones who are going to make that happen. The ones who could make that happen are 13 years old.
No, it's the parents that can sit there, but it has to be a movement. It has to be, you know what I mean? There has to be some type of an incentive, because if you, like I said, on the dry January, when you see your friends doing it, all of a sudden you want to sit there and jump on the bandwagon. If your friends are jumping on the bandwagon of, oh, you know what, when we're out to dinner, our kids aren't on the cell phones. When we're at the beach, our kids aren't here. You know what I mean? Maybe it's something you can sit there and create that.
Well, we all can do it, it sounds like. Look, we all can actually set a better example. Trent's going to try to not have so much screen time, but that's look, this subject we knew was not necessarily a political one. It really is a social one, isn't it? So it's there's a lot. We definitely need to talk a little bit about social media, though, and what we can do about social media. The government could do something that maybe doesn't relate to kids. We're going to handle that for another show. Other than that, thank you for discussing this important topic. Now let's get together and get this thing done. Thank you. See you next week.